reports. I asked Councillor Mattis, but he excused himself. The only item that was on the agenda, so I will report that we discussed a business facade improvement program. Council had a good discussion about it, and a motion was passed to develop design standards that would be included in the business facade program. And once those design standards come back to council, council will make a final decision on the program. Moving to water matters. First item is the Hester Creek Spillway Pipe Relining Award. I will pass it over to the Director of Operations, whose report is attached.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is to provide council with the recent tender bids on the Hester Creek Spillway Pipe Relining project and award the work. In the report was True's recommendations for awarding the contract to H&M Excavating Limited, and staff agree that they are capable of doing the work at a favorable cost. The only other bid was by Mike Johnson Excavating Limited, which came in $20,448.75 more. With the low bid, and if we estimate their engineering costs, the total project cost will come to $123,387, give or take. A little bit of background on the relining project. In 2017 actually, we think that the culvert that's where it received most of the damage, because this spillway actually acts as an overflow or outflow to the river for canal system, but also for Hester Creek during certain times of the year. And 2017 was the year that our canal got breached with some debris flow and stuff, and it was just a bad year. There were a lot of rocks coming down that creek, and so we didn't notice 2018. We were on top of it a lot more, but in late 2018, that's when staff noticed that there were some issues with the culvert and pipe, and it's pulled away or ripped and torn in a couple sections. So what Tree put together, what we came up with is pulling in some HDP, another pipe, pull it in within the upper section, and redo the head wall. And that's what this project's all about. So staff is proposing that we award the Hester Creek Spillway Pipe Relining project to H&M Excavating Limited for the amount of $107,887.50. And if council had any questions.
I would have a question. I was just wondering about further damage. Has there been anything as far as mitigating the rocks coming down, or will that always be just something that happens depending on flows? And the fix of this HPD pipe, is that going to be able to handle the flow of the larger rocks without failing like the existing system?
Yeah, the HDP pipe will handle that. It should be fine. It's tied. It'll be tied right into the head wall, tied in with and concreted. It's HDP is a durable product, and plus in 2018 we had a better system on how to work the creek and created pools before the runoff. In 2017 we didn't have that opportunity because it had happened basically overnight and caught everybody off guard, and it was just catch up time from there. So from basically 2018 on, we haven't really allowed those big boulders and rocks going down. We get the odd one, but it's not like it was in 2017. So it's just a repair that the lower section seemed to be fine, which is on the east side of the highway going to the river. It was the upper section that received most of the damage.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor?
I would move what the $50,000 under the original budget of $175, so that's a really good thing.
Councillor Machial?
Just sort of comment on that, I kind of wonder, was it the original budget that was out of whack? I mean, somehow something happened here. You know, I mean,
Well, when they were looking at different ways of replacing it, and I think in the end, they came up with a cheaper version that will be durable and last for a long time.
that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it was a worst case scenario for everyone.
It's like,
Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, the water quality report for July 2020. I'll pass this over to the Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is the water quality summary report for July 2020. One of the things that's noted under the rural water systems was installation of a new flow meter at Diversion Dam. Our old flow meter, which is tied to our SCADA and helps us control the levels of the canal and gates, has been out of service for most of the year. So we had to order a new one, and it was about 10 years old, the old one, and it's an Argonaut meter, sat in the water, and it could register and give us approximate calculations of how much flow is going through the canal. Now we have a new one, but we're still working on the bugs in the new one. So we've had a lot more operation costs as far as going out to the dam, tweaking, making sure things are working okay. But I think we're getting close to having it all figured out. As far as the rest of July goes, we saw a wide range of temperatures from 25 to 40 degrees Celsius. So first half of July was a little cooler, and then the second half of July was maybe what most of us expect that we lived around here for a long time. Our 7-year averages were below for that month, and probably because of the first half of July being a little cooler, a little more precipitation at the beginning of July. Other than that, there's no real big, no other things that really point out too much, unless anybody has any questions.
No questions?
we'll proceed.
Move to seat, second. Councillor Grace. Further discussion, questions? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, the release of closed water resolutions from June 2019 to June 2020. I'll pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before Council this afternoon is the release of closed resolutions following Council's policy that was adopted in June 25, 2012. Council wished to consider the release of closed resolutions. They were reviewed at the July 27th, 2020 closed water meeting for the period June 2019 to June 2020. The resolutions that are for release are attached to this report. These ones are all specific to water matters. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, corporate officer. Any questions, council? These are just for information, so there's no resolution attached. Seeing no questions, I'll move on to item 4, purchasing and sales policy. Again, I'll pass it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before Council is to seek Council's consideration to amend the purchasing and sales policy. As a bit of a background, Council has had a number of discussions respecting and supporting stimulating the local economy during the COVID-19 pandemic, sorry. At the April 22nd, 2020 meeting, Council directed staff to provide additional information regarding waiving the purchasing policy with respect to the low bid and criteria for awarding local. And further, at the May 25th, 2020 Council meeting, Council further directed staff to review Section 8.0 to include additional clauses to reject bids. Some research and review took place to determine how to accommodate these changes and include some clauses. We did find some documentation from the City of Nanaimo with regards to vendor management, and they shared their policy in support of documents relating to the vendor management. Staff had our solicitor review the section of the policy to ensure that we would be in compliance with the law if we were going to make that change and include those into our policy. At the same time, the solicitor reviewed all sections in the policy just to bring it up to speed and had some additional comments with regards to wording that is contained in our policy. So with removal of section 8.0 and adding in the vendor management policy, this enables the town to ask the contractor for a plan if performance levels were not satisfactory, and how we could work together to make any improvements and changes to ensure that we can work together with suppliers under best practices. So section 8.0, as you'll see in the attached purchasing policy, is removed and added, changed with the vendor management section. As it states that the town values the expertise and experience and quality of work provided by suppliers, and with this type of provision within the policy, it allows us to nurture and to maintain those relationships and to ensure that the quality of goods and services meet the requirements of the town. The documents that Nanaimo provided also has some checklists and documentation that staff can work with when there's any questions or concerns to work through. Throughout the policy, there are a number of changes. As I said, I don't know if you want to go through each section or if you just want to speak to the change from the 8.0. The director, the chief financial officer has as well as reviewed that, and he's able to comment on that as well. Carry on.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if anybody else read through it or has any questions. I had a few that came up as I went through it. 6.0 insurance. Should we specify what insurance we're looking for, or is that specified in the tender documents or the RFP documents? Because it just at this point just says insurance. I'm assuming it's liability insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would think that for each project, it may have varying levels of a dollar value attached to the tender document.
Then I think we should use the word liability in that clause, if that's what we're after. Because the word liability is, it just says insurance.
Okay.
That was just one. The second one was an explanation in 8.3.1, the exclusion of vendors. I don't see that as ever happening, but I just wondered if you could explain the difference between point 1 and point 1 AC. We've got a 2-year and a 5-year, and I wondered why there was a discrepancy there. And why they didn't match. Not necessarily discrepancy, but why they didn't match.
So that's 8.3.
8.3.1. One says the vendor or any of its officers or directors is currently engaged or engaged in the last 2 years. And then further down under 1C, any matters arising from the town's exercise of its powers within the last 5 years. I just wonder why those dates were different.
I could review that, but the CAO may have a comment. In 1C, often it refers to the 5 years because the Local Government Act and Community Charter has a limitation of 5 years.
action against the town, which is a little bit different than our powers underneath the Local Government Act. So that's where they're putting 2 years on legal action, and then the 5 years is as indicated by the corporate officer. That's the limitations that we have for powers under our own, under the Local Government Act or the Community Charter.
I understand what you're saying, I'm just still not sure why it's different, but that's clever. 9.2.1, I just wanted some clarification here. I thought our current purchasing policy or accounting policy was that council needed to approve transfers between departments, but not transfers of funds between accounts within the department. Like, my understanding is that the department head can transfer with the work of with the CFO within their department, they can transfer items. But if it's transferred from one department to another, then council requires approval. So I'm just looking for that. I think that's our current policy.
That has not changed. That's what you're reading there. It has not been updated by us at this point in time. It has been there. 9.2.1 has been there. It's the current practice that we currently have. That's the way it's written. But I'll have perhaps the CFO might be able to better explain that section.
Yeah, I just think it's in conflict with one of our other policies. I don't have the policy here, but I think it's in conflict.
CFO, do you have any comments?
No, I don't disagree.
Can you please go to the mic? Can you please go to the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, no, to council, to your worship, I don't disagree with that. I know the practice that I would follow myself would be that as long as it stays within the department, we can certainly increase or decrease budgets accordingly, as long as it stays within the department. So we're not creating either a deficit or a surplus depending on the circumstance. So I personally, I wasn't aware of this item in the purchasing policy either, so.
So that's not consistent with
The way we do it now.
no, okay, so that we need to change that. 9.4, the authority limits on town staff. I just wanted clarity there when it's, for example, between 30 and 50,000, it says municipal manager and CFO. Does that mean one reviews the other, or that 2 signatures are required? How does? And I'm just suggesting it should be clarified in the policy how that works.
It means that the municipal manager and the CFO have that authority to approve purchases between 30 and 50,000, not together, but we each have that ability to approve up to $50,000.
So where's the oversight on this? Is there any oversight at all?
On the 30 to 50?
On any of them? You know, like the first one has oversight, below all town staff is authorized by their supervisor. So the supervisor is the oversight. Up to 10,000, the supervisor and foreman, can they just spend up to 10,000 with no oversight? I guess that's and then beyond that, what is the oversight? I think there needs to be a level of oversight there somehow.
The oversight is in the budget. We can't go over our budget, but when these bills come through, we do, both the CFO and myself look at everything as well to make sure that it is all okay.
I guess I'm asking if that should be reflected in the policy then. If that's how it's done, it should be in the policy. Further down in the, I guess would be section 11, purchasing protocol, hiring professionals. I know this is no change from the past. But I was wondering about 11.3.1, 11.4.3. It basically locks us in to a lot of, you know, that we're gonna use, and I'm referring more to engineering here. Engineering costs are always a concern for me because it seems over the course of a year, we spend a lot of money on engineering. And this particular area of the policy kind of locks us in. 11.4.4, for example, says that I should compare town consultant rates with rates charged to similar sized municipalities for like services. Every 2 years. Has that actually occurred?
For engineers or for anybody?
Well, engineers, solicitors, I'm looking at what the policy says.
There are times that we do look at them, yes. We do review that.
But we haven't done it every 2 years, is what you're saying?
I can't say that we've done it for all of our current consultants.
11.4.4, I think the words "and in rare occasions" should be deleted. Just throwing out ideas here. I mean, I'm sure the staff will review the things that will come back to us once we. 14.1.2, tenders RFPs that exceed the budget.
I'm sorry, which number was that?
14.1.2, page 9 of 16.
Mhm.
Was a little concerned with that in that this gives the staff authority to basically change the contract and meet the price without council approval. I think that if that's going to happen, it should come to council before it's awarded. Negotiate with the lowest materially compliant buyer to reduce the scope of the project to fit within the budget. I think that's a dangerous practice.
For staff to go ahead with that, staff would not come forward and do that. They would come to council because we would advise you that the proposals were all over budget. That's a recommend rejection of all tenders and or proposals. So that's a recommendation they would take to council.
Well, it says or. It says that you recommend rejection of all tenders or proposals and re-tender a project or modified scope or negotiate.
Well,
So
that would
this
be
gives you
your,
the option.
that would be the options that would be provided to council to give direction on. That wouldn't be for the department manager.
And I think it should reflect in there that it has to come back to council.
Well, that would be automatic.
It doesn't say that it's automatic, is my point, and it needs to say that it must come back to council. At this point, if all of the bids are overpriced according to this policy, if we approve it, then they should rework the project in order to match the price, and council would have no say.
Can I point out that 14.1.1 indicates recommend rejection of all tenders and proposals and retender a project of modified scope or negotiate? So that's a recommendation that we would be bringing forward to council for your decision.
I understand that, but as long as the word "or" is in there, then it gives staff the opportunity to renegotiate.
No,
without
it
council.
does not. It's a recommendation that's coming to council when we bring forward the item being over budget. And we can recommend that you reject all the proposals and retender a project of a modified scope, or you ask us to negotiate with the lowest materially. So it's a decision by council.
Could we have the policy reflect that it will be a council decision, is what I'm asking.
Sure.
At this point, it doesn't say that, and I think it's an important part.
Through your worship to Councillor Mattis, the solicitor does comment with regards to 14.1.1 and 14.1.2 that if retendering of all bids exceed budget, the town must modify or reduce the scope of the project or tender a significant time later, 1 year or so. Simply retendering the same project after a public opening at which all prices are disclosed to all bidders could invite allegations of bid shopping on the part of the town. Disclosing the prices obtained from a competitive bidding process to obtain an advantage. That's for 14.1.2. So, you know, we are, of course, bound by, of course, the direction from council, but staff would, you know, to give comfort, you know, staff would have to follow the tendering process to ensure that we're not shopping for a low bid, if that helps clarify at all.
We will include that it comes back to council.
Thank you. And that was the end of my
Thank you, Councillor Manis. Unless anybody else has any other items, I've got a few myself. Starting with 16 sole source purchases. I'm just wondering if we should be adding in there that the $1,000 limit be included. That was included in the solicitor's notes. There's nothing in there saying when a sole source procedure, I guess, starts, unless it's in a policy in another document somewhere.
You can look at that, Your Worship.
Okay. Going to 18.0, local suppliers. 18.1 says, the intent of this policy is to ensure the town receives the best value possible on goods and services it procures. The town supports local merchants, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just wondering, just a question, I don't think it needs to be in here, nor is it the right place, but what criteria are we going to use to determine that we're getting the best value of possible goods and services? And I guess those will be included in the tender documents so that all bidders would know the criteria they're up against.
Absolutely, and as well, the vendor management aspect of it as well helps to give some controls on the services that suppliers are providing.
Okay. Moving down to Appendix 1. I believe earlier on in the document it refers to Appendix 1 as Appendix A, so maybe just a typo.
No, there's,
There's an
maybe it's
appendix one.
Schedule A, sorry. Schedule A.
appendix one.
Appendix 1 is page 16 of 16.
Right, and this one should be 16 of 16. Appendix 1 should actually be Appendix A, because it talks about the environmental performance decision criteria. If you go back up into the document where it references, where it has the clause on environmental performance decision criteria, it says, it references Appendix A.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. Yeah, I can make sure that the appendixes are
Okay.
properly noted.
And I think my last one, I'll check for sure, was just about preparing and issuing vendor performance evaluation criteria. Just reading that, it tends to talk about service providers, which I'm assuming would be someone like a janitorial provider. I'm just wondering if there should be something added in or more clarification there, that they should also be conducted post-project. Like once you've tendered a construction project and it's complete, that you would do an evaluation on the contractor and or the engineering consultant that was used on the job as well. There doesn't seem to be anything, maybe I'm missing it or just misreading it, but I didn't really get that clarification there.
We could definitely look at that. I know there was a comment from City of Nanaimo when we were going back and forth with the documents, and they filled out a lot of the criteria forms on a project or a supplier based on complaints from on the project or the supply, just due to the time that it took to do the things. But we would over time start to build those schedules for suppliers, and,
Yeah,
and in particular when there was a complaint or a concern.
Right, there is a different form down there that talks about vendor performance and contractor performance, but the actual, that part of the document doesn't really identify when you're going to do contractor performance.
Okay. We can take a look at that.
Because you won't be able to do that yearly, you might only use that contractor once every 2 years or something, but if it's done after a project is completed, and you evaluate performance deficiencies, change orders, all those kinds of things, that's good information if you're looking for ways to be able to qualify contractors or not qualify contractors, debar contractors. That's going to be that work's going to need to be done. And my last one is under, let's see here, I guess it's under 4.0. I'll get the page, that's probably easier. Page 5, 28 to 43 of the report. It talks about the CFO may debar a vendor for a period of up to 3 years. Going back to Councillor Mattis's comment, there seems to be some 2-year, 5-year, this one says 3-year. I thought it was 2 years in the solicitor notes. 2 deep would be a reasonable period of time to debar a contractor. So I'm just wondering if that should be 2 years instead of 3 years.
Can I just ask what page that's on?
It says 5 of 8 under the appendixes.
5 of 8 under the vendor performance evaluation for 28 to 43 of the report.
They're distinctively different though, right? Because one, you're talking about legal issues that were brought forward. This isn't legal issues, it's just performance evaluation. Whether it's 2 years, 3 years.
But it contradicts even earlier up in the policy, whatever that section was where it had the 2 and 5, it said 2 years.
But that was for legal issues brought against the town versus the 5, I understand now. It doesn't have to be legal issues brought against the town. There's a lot of other issues. That's what the CAO is trying to get to. Performance evaluation, you know, I know they were taking it from City, and I know that's a huge purchasing department. I'm sure the City Kelowna does too. This is a big policy to administer, I have to admit. Like it's going to be onerous on Sean. Because he does a lot of the contractor to go back and to evaluate each one of these afterwards. And so whether it's 2 years, 3 years, I don't see the inconsistency, but I do see you have to set a time frame of how long these people won't be qualifying for town work.
No, that I'm fine with it saying 3 years. I just want to make sure that the 2 and the 5 and the 3 are all not there's no contradiction of any of that in there, and that to me just seemed like a contradiction. Because the solicitor had mentioned something about 2 years was a reasonable time, and any more than that could be considered onerous. So that's where I twigged on the 3 year on the solicitor's comments.
It's a good point.
That was all I had.
Now we have to hire a purchasing manager.
Councillor Machial.
Yeah, Your Worship, under 9.4, are those existing levels, or are we altering those, or that's the question I was curious on the purchase, and Councillor Mattis highlighted that there's no oversight on some of those, but are those changing, or is that our existing levels?
There's existing levels.
It's
Those
existing.
existing levels, okay.
Yeah, I just look at it as an opportunity to look at the whole policy, the existing and the proposed changes.
That's fine.
Any other questions, comments? So I don't think we can adopt this as amended. It probably needs to come back to council. Would that be fair?
That would be a good idea.
Yep.
So we can refer back to staff. We don't really need to refer back to, I guess we kind of are referring back to staff for additional information or just some additional clarification.
So moved.
Second.
Got moved and seconded. number 5, council equipment information technology policy. I'll pass this over to the corporate officer. CEO.
Currently, right now, you'll have to, I believe you'll have to just postpone consideration of this item due to the fact that the purchasing and sales policy has not been adopted as of yet. And that's what's happening with respect to this item. It's going into that policy.
Did we want to have just a brief discussion on it so that if there's any questions about that, we can't rescind it at this point in time, but just an understanding.
This
Councillor Madden?
is, what's in front of us is the old policy.
Right.
And what staff is suggesting is that this will be incorporated as part of the policy that will be coming back. We'll rescind at that time and then adopt a new policy which will then make this obsolete.
Okay.
If you go back to the item, the purchasing and sales policy, the council equipment has been included in section 21.9. And that's where once council adopts the purchasing and sales policy, then you can rescind the council equipment information technology policy.
Yes, I did read that section. I did not have any questions about it. I understood it. I just was giving council an opportunity if they had any questions about that. And it didn't come up from anybody, so we will leave it at this point in time. Then we'll ask if there's anything to go to reports. Is there anything to report, Councillor Sidhu?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Sidhu. Councillor Machial?
Meeting-wise, same thing, Your Worship. Obviously very busy, but.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Machial.
Actually, could I mention one thing, Your Worship?
Yep.
I'm involved in about 2 or 3 conference calls. Provincial government's kind of reaching out because a lot of the publicity with regards to workers and stuff. And we had a conference call with the Minister of Agriculture and the Deputy Minister was involved with that, and a couple others as well.
Okay. Moving to bylaws, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.15, 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue for 3rd reading. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is seeking to amend the zoning of 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue from RH1, which is residential high density 1, to RS1, residential low density 1, to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision on each of the 2 subject properties. At the July 27, 2020 meeting, the following resolution was passed: that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-15 be read a first and second time and proceed to the August 24, 2020 regular council meeting for 3rd reading. And that the holding of the public hearing be waived in accordance with section 464(2) of the Local Government Act, and that staff give notice of the waiving of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. So with that, the options are that council may choose to support the staff recommendation, may choose to deny it. Council may choose to defer 3rd reading on zoning amendment bylaw 1380-15 in order to hold a public hearing on September 8, 2020, or council may choose to refer back to staff for additional information. The recommendation from staff is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-15 be read a 3rd time, and that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-15 be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for sign-off on the bylaw amendment prior to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions, council? Comments?
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved, Council Grace. Second, Council Schwarzenberger. Any questions, discussion, comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395 for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd reading. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to introduce Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395. The proposed Heritage Procedure Bylaw establishes procedures for the following: adding or removing a property from the Community Heritage Register. This includes a written request to the town along with a statement of significance. This request is reviewed by the Director of Development Services and forwarded to the Heritage Society, which is the Oliver District Community Heritage Society, which will evaluate the request and provide a recommendation to Council. The Heritage Procedure Bylaw also establishes procedures for an application for a Heritage Designation Bylaw. So this includes a submitted application form along with a fee to the Town of Oliver with a description of the property, feature or structure to be designated, and statement of significance along with some pictures and drawings. It's reviewed by the Director of Development Services and forwarded to the Heritage Society for comment, which will evaluate the request and provide a recommendation to Council. The bylaw will then require the various readings and a public hearing prior to adoption. There are 2 properties in Oliver that are currently under Heritage Designation Bylaw. These would be the CPR station and the museum. These bylaws are from the 1980s and do not speak to a requirement for a heritage alteration permit for any building alterations. And the third item that the proposed Heritage Designation Bylaw would establish procedures for is the application for a heritage alteration permit. So the idea behind this is if you're going to protect a building fully, then there needs to be processes which would allow you to make alterations under a permit process. If a property is protected, which is just what I mentioned, sorry, the procedures for heritage alteration permits include a submitted application form along with a fee with drawings and details of the alterations. So same as the other processes, the request reviewed by the Director of Development Services forwarded to the Community Heritage Society, which will evaluate the proposal and the request and provide a recommendation to Council. So the idea here being that the Heritage Society is heavily involved in each of these steps because they're more experienced than our current staff with regards to heritage. The proposed bylaw has been thoroughly discussed with this society. The main comment from the society was to ensure that application fees are kept as low as possible. Once the bylaw is adopted, an application can be brought forward to protect the town hall building under a heritage protection bylaw. An amendment to the fees and charges bylaw will also be required to include a fee for heritage alteration permit applications and for heritage alteration bylaw applications. An application form will be developed for both of these application types. I included in this report the current Community Heritage Registry, and as part of the recommendation to Council is to remove Southern Okanagan Secondary School from this list as it suffered the tragic fire in 2011. So with that, the options are that Council may choose to support the recommendation, Council may choose not to support it, or they may choose to refer back to staff. The recommendation from staff is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Heritage Procedure Bylaw 1395, and the adoption of the bylaw be scheduled for the September 8, 2020 meeting, and that Southern Okanagan Secondary School be removed from the Community Heritage Register, and that that Council direct staff to send a letter to the Heritage Minister notifying this removal. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions to the Director. So, just so I understand the procedure, a property owner themselves would apply for the designation, and then they have to pay for that, and then should they receive the designation, then they have to pay if they want to do any alterations. So, I guess my question is there going to be a benefit to the property owner to receive this designation? Like, I understand the importance of, recognizing our heritage, but is this something that's realistically going to happen?
Yeah, that might be a better question directed to the Community Heritage Society about the benefits of having a property that falls underneath, that is subject to a heritage designation bylaw, whether that's grants to do work, whether there's tax breaks. I mean, that may be something. Oh, he went home. Sorry. No, I mean, ultimately this came up because of the request for staff to look into designating the municipal hall under a heritage designation bylaw. And the first step after doing research was to actually create a procedure bylaw to do that. And then also this bylaw will have steps and processes for adding and removing a property from the heritage register, which there wasn't really a proper process before. 555 Royal Crescent came across my desk 6 months ago to remove it from the list, and there wasn't really a proper process for that. So that's what this bylaw will also encompass.
If I follow up, so aside from property owners self-identifying, is there any appetite for the town to be seeking out properties to add them in, or is that something that we would know?
It's definitely something we could look at, but ultimately I haven't had any requests at all recently to do this. It was more, as I mentioned, for the municipal hall. But yeah, I mean, perhaps at the next reading it might be beneficial, or at the next meeting, to have someone from the Heritage Society here to speak a little bit more about the benefits of that.
I think that'd be good, and it'd be nice to have some information if there's, if we can find out if there's, you know, any increase or decrease to property value with a designation like this, eventually as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Grace. Councillor Madison?
Few questions. I'm a little concerned that we're adding another fee. Is there a way that we can word this so that if you get you pay the fee to alter the property and then you have to get a building permit? Whereas if you're not a heritage property, you just get a building permit. I'm not sure that we need to be double dipping there. Is there a way that we can do this in our fees bylaw possibly? Because obviously this will have to fall under the fees bylaw somewhere along the line, so that they're not paying more than just a normal building permit. I don't see that as equitable, to be honest with you. Just
Director?
No, that's a good comment. It's something we can look into. I guess the idea of it is similar to when you require a development permit. There's that initial step for the council to approve the form and character of the building, and then there's the building permit process. So it will require staff work to refer it, to write a report to council to approve the alteration permit. So there will be work involved. So that's up to council. I'm not sure if the CAO has any comments further on if council could waive a fee associated with the heritage alteration permit, but that's something we can look into.
or it could be a $1 fee. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm sure we can do. Second question was, all of the properties listed in the heritage register, were they put there at the request of the owners? And I only ask that because I used to own 6431 Okanagan Street and had no idea that it was on the heritage register. And I don't think that the town did at the time when I did the subdivision.
CEO?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do believe that the Heritage Society did a lot of work with regards to those buildings, and they're the ones that put that request forward to a prior council. So it was done through the town itself, but it was the Heritage Society. They did have the director of the time do the, it was a project through them that the town and area C was involved in.
So is there any way of knowing that the owners actually gave permission at the time? Or was this?
They don't have to give permission to be on this type of registry.
We can just force them.
It's not a restricted designation when it's this type.
Not restricted in what sense?
I'll let the lady next to me.
Possibly the Director of Development Services knows the answer as well, but when I was doing them, when I worked at the regional district, it's, the Community Heritage Registry is just identifying parcels within your municipality that have significance. So that is what the Community Heritage Registry is. There's a statement of significance developed for the parcel, identifies it, it indicates what the value is, but there's no restrictions to the property owner, no limitations on property values to be on a Community Heritage Registry. The museum and the jail, and the museum, they're on a different type of registry where and it's put on title, so they are restricted in any kind of alterations to the exterior of the building.
So the alteration portion of this would only apply to those buildings, it wouldn't apply to anything else on this list?
That's correct. Just the museum, the jail and the museum. And if the town hall is placed on the registry, they would have similar restrictions. CPR station.
So we're going to charge an extra fee to the museum, the jail, the town hall if we do any alterations? Nobody else?
They're the only ones on it that have heritage designation.
Seems a little odd to me.
Well, I'll just comment because I had to deal with this a lot in Kelowna. So anything with a bylaw has a heritage alteration permit. It would go to a committee, a council committee, who would review what you were going to do to that building, changing the form of character, whether you were changing the windows, anything that you were going to do to that type of building, you had to go to the heritage committee, who would make a recommendation to council. Council had the choice whether or not to follow that. It isn't written in law by the committee. It isn't written in law anywhere that you have to do that, but that's just the procedure that would go. As far as the designation goes, you can do it. The Memorial Arena, the old arena downtown Kelowna, where the old police station used to be, it was on the registry. And I didn't have to get a heritage alteration permit to take the chimney down or change the color of the building or do anything like that. So those other buildings are considered significant enough and historical enough that they want to keep the form and character there. But it isn't, council still has a say what they're going to do to that building.
So you have two different lists, one where it's designated heritage and one where it's in the community heritage registry.
Right.
And we are going to be legislating for the registry, even though people never asked to be put on that list?
No, you're gonna be for the heritage designation protection, and not just for the community register. It wouldn't be for that.
It would not be for the, so the people the people on the properties listed in town hall or the heritage register, they can pretty much at this point do as they please.
That's correct.
Through your
So
worship,
this is only for basically municipal owned buildings that we're talking about, that we're putting a fee in place. The museum,
Yeah,
town hall.
ones that have a bylaw, are designated by bylaw.
Okay, I'm just wondering why we're doing that when we own the buildings.
Councilman Camilla?
No, that's okay. You don't. The mayor answered the question.
Thanks. So, I was just gonna add that I think this has come forward to us, or I think it says in there that this has come forward to us, because of the request from the Heritage Society to add the town hall and the surrounding area or give it the heritage designation, the actual proper, go through the process of the heritage bylaw and all that sort of thing. They obviously see value in that, which is why the request has been made and which is why the designation already exists on a couple of buildings. And it might be, because it does seem kind of counterintuitive to put extra fees and extra processes on buildings that are owned by the town, but it might be a nice decision or an opportunity for us to hear from the Heritage Society as to why this designation is important and how potentially private landowners can take advantage of it as well, because I know that they've talked, just in some of the meetings that I've been involved in, there's been conversation about how it opens up access to grants and different things like that. So it might be nice to have them speak to us on that.
So I'm assuming based on that I could make the motion that this be referred back to staff for further information.
I'll second.
I would ask if staff have an understanding of what information they're being asked to bring back.
Not particularly. I'm just the part that I'm questioning is it the fees then associated with the application, because that would be done at the time of the fees and charges bylaw when it was introduced? This,
I do believe you'd like to have the Heritage Society come and speak to you and provide you some background on this heritage designation as well.
Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I don't know if that's information that they would have, but I had the question about property values, if there's any increase or decrease that's been noted in other communities for properties. That's a question. Just what the benefit is to the property owner themselves.
Councillor Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. And to that, I would just add just the benefit of a heritage designation bylaw in general. Clearly, we see the benefit, and so it just helps us to see the benefit as well.
thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to business, the 2019 annual report. I'll refer to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The 2019 annual report is being presented to Council for Council's consideration. Under the Section 99 of the Community Charter, staff is presenting the annual report for your consideration. It's noted in legislation each year, a council must prepare an annual report, which must include the audited financial statements, permissive tax exemptions, a report respecting municipal services and operations, performance measures and objectives, and the other information that council may consider advisable. Advertising requirements have been met, and the 14-day public inspection time period has taken place. The final requirement is for council to consider questions from the public at this meeting tonight and to endorse the report. The annual report was made available to the public on July 29th. Looking at the annual report is the table of contents. I just wanted to point out the additional pages that have been added from the 2018 report. I included a page on the council committees. The change on the Spirit of Oliver awards was that, they haven't been awarded, so we said that we'll see you again next year. The 2019 Citizen Survey information, and the 100th anniversary of the ditch. Just going back to the Spirit of Oliver Awards, we are in the process of preparing to present those awards in a COVID scenario. If you have any questions regarding the annual report, I'd be happy to take them.
I don't see any questions. Guess can we
I'll move receipt.
move receipt? Thank you, Councillor Squibber. Second, and Councillor Grace. Should get a move endorse.
Rescinded. Do you want me to, I'll move that council endorse the 2019 annual report prepared under section 98 of the community charter.
Seconded by Councillor Schwarzenberg. Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2 under business, transfer of lease 3-Bar Construction Limited to Tanya Lindley. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before council is to seek consent to assign hangar number 2 that's located within the newer 3-bay hangar from 3-Bar Construction to a new party. The airport, as you know, has a number of hangars on the site, which the town leases the land to the tenants and the Oliver Hangar Society. 3-Bar Construction is selling hangar 2 to 3-bay hangar to Tanya Lindley. To finalize this transaction, the lease needs to be transferred into the new owner's name, as all airport leases have the primary condition that the tenant hangar owner shall not assign its leasehold interest under this lease and shall not mortgage or otherwise encumber the leasehold interest under this lease without prior written consent of the landlord. The terms and conditions of the lease remain the same, except for that the term of the lease is amended to a 23-year term from August 2020 to May 15th, 2043. The attached is a copy of the proposed
23 years, the remainder of the lease on that property?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'll move the recommendation.
Do I have a second? Second, Councilman Camille. Do we need to read this out? No.
I can, Your Worship, thank you. That council consent to assigning the 3-bar construction limited 3-bay hangar number 2 lease to Tanya Lindley with all the terms and conditions of the lease remaining the same, except for the term of the lease shall be reduced to 23 years from August 2020 to May 15th, 2043, and that council authorizes the signing authorities to execute the lease agreement as presented in the corporate officer's report dated August 24th, 2020.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Any questions, discussion? All the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to item 3, release of closed resolutions, June 2019 to June 2020. Again, I'll pass this over to the Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to release closed resolutions for the period June 2019 to June 2020. Following the routine release of closed resolutions policy adopted by Council on June 25th, 2012, Council considered the release of closed resolutions for the period June 2019 to June 2020. At the July 27th, 2020 closed meeting, Council authorized the release of resolutions that are attached to this report. There are an attachment of a few pages, 2 pages of resolutions that have been released to the public. I can take any questions that you have. This is for your information.
I don't see any questions. We'll move on to item 4, request of domestic ducts. For the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to provide further information to Council regarding permitting domestic ducts within the municipality, as per a request from a property owner who is subject to bylaw enforcement. Should mention at the July 27th regular open council meeting, this was discussed, and Council directed staff to provide additional information on domestic ducts within the municipality. Just speaking about domestic ducts, as per the Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine, domestic ducks typically have a higher rate of egg laying than wild breeds. Wings are typically shorter than the wild breeds. There are 3 most common forms of domestic ducks: Pekin, Muscovy, and Cayuga, and that's the type of ducks that the subject property owner has. Wild ducks weigh less and have longer wings than domestic ducks. An example of that would be a mallard. Duck behaviors. Ducks drink and excrete more water than chickens or turkeys. The droppings contain over 90% moisture. It is therefore necessary to take extra measures to maintain litter floors inside sheltered areas in a dry condition. This will require regular addition of fresh bedding on top of the bedding that has become soiled or wet, and when necessary, cleaning out the old litter and replacing it with fresh litter. The basis of that is essentially they're a bit more high maintenance. Staff have consulted with the City of Nanaimo, which provided the following comments in relation to ducks being permitted within their municipality. There's been 1 or 2 complaints over the past 5 years related to a duck escaping from a property. Complaints are limited since there is a requirement to maintain a setback from a neighboring property with the coop. Ducks are a bit dirtier than chickens. There has not been any cases where a bylaw officer had to interpret the difference between a wild or domestic duck. And they say that they have far more dog complaints than duck complaints. Staff believe that if Council directs staff to bring forth amendments to the Animal Control Bylaw to permit ducks, guidelines should be put in place, such as placing a maximum number based on the size of the property and requiring that the coop be located a minimum of 10 feet from the neighboring property. With that, the options are that Council directs staff to bring forth required amendments to Animal Control Bylaw 1224 to a future Council meeting to permit ducks, that Council receive and file a letter and direct staff to provide a response to the inquirer, or that Council receives additional information from staff. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
comment. I think just when we're developing the bylaw, there needs to be some consideration for a total amount of ducks and chickens if somebody were to have both.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. My wife and I were having dinner, and our discussion, as it often does, turned to ducks this evening. And so my one question was, do domestic ducks need a pond or some sort of water? Is that still water that's going to cause problems for mosquitoes, larvae, that kind of thing? Or is it just running water that they use and they don't need like a little pond or some sort of area like that?
I did do a bit of research on the appropriate housing of ducks, and it says that a simple structure such as a partially enclosed shed, inexpensive fencing, a feed hopper or trough made of wood, and a simply constructed watering device. Shelter should be located on a high, well-drained area of the yard. Sandy soil is preferred. So that was the information I had. It doesn't speak to pond necessarily being required.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberg. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was kind of alone last time around, and I appreciate that council got more information. I did a visit to the location where the ducks are, and I can understand. I spoke to the neighbors. I didn't speak to the owners of the ducks. I spoke to the neighbors on both sides. The neighbor on one side said absolutely no problems, they're wonderful. And I understood why when I went and spoke to the other neighbor, and it's because the pen where the ducks are is located in between the two properties. So one neighbor has no idea because it's on the opposite side, and the other neighbor does. So the part that you put in there is about 10 feet from the property line is critical. And it should also, it could even be more than that in reality, given the noise, because the ducks were making noise constantly while I was there for the 10 minutes that I watched them. They did have a pond. It should be also stated in there that it should be in the backyard. In this particular case, it's in the side yard, side/front yard. So I think it should be in the backyard. And further to Councillor Grice's point about the total number of fowl, whether it be ducks or chickens, I think the regulation should be the same for both. That you can't have a chicken coop in your front yard or your side yard either. Again, out of consideration for your neighbors. Maybe it's a case that we look at all of the animals that are in our bylaw and put all of their pens in the backyard far enough away from neighboring property owners so that their neighbors aren't disturbed by the presence of the animals. I know I'm not going to win when it comes to saying no ducks. I'm fairly confident that won't happen. But I really think it's important that we put some regulations in there because I was there, they are noisy. The person who lives beside them on that one side, they are absolutely right. They have lost the use of their yard on that side because of the ducks, and which I think is unfair. You know, I'm not sure what our procedure is in terms of this. I would hope in future that we enforce the bylaw first, and after the bylaw is enforced, then the application can be made to change the bylaw. I don't think that we should be allowing it to happen when you're in contradiction of the bylaw. It is what it is. That's just my own suggestion. I'm sure you'll do your own. In terms of the running water in this particular case, yes, they did have a pond, but they did have a circulating pump so that the water was not spilled, so that we wouldn't get mosquitoes. And again, maybe if that can be in the regulations, that it has to be a moving water supply if there is in fact a pond. Because basically that's what the ducks did. They sat there, they quacked, and they drank water. That's pretty much what they did.
Thanks, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my concern with the rule of 10 feet is, are we going to create all pets equal? Because what are we going to do with dogs then? Because dogs generally have full reign of an entire backyard and are often, running in between. If there's houses with an adjacent shared yard, then there's dogs in there barking. So I think that, a lot of what it needs to come down to is being a considerate neighbor, having good communication with your neighbors when you do those sorts of things. I mean, I'm not opposed to having the 10-foot rule, but if we're going to start adding it to other
I think fowl of any kind for production of eggs is different. You don't have them in your house. Most people don't even have a dog house. Their pets, their cats, their dogs sleep in the house. They don't have any structures in the yard for most pets, or smaller pets anyway. This is specific to generating food, so I would agree that they should be in the backyard, not in a side yard or a front yard, and they should be at least 3 meters, if not 5 meters off any of the property lines, so that they're far enough away from the adjoining neighbors that they're not creating too much of an inconvenience. And I agree with Councillor Grice that we should have, the bylaw now states that you can have, I think it's 5 chickens for 500 square meters, and then you could add one for every extra 100 square meters. I think we should cap that, and it should be all fowl. If they have 3 chickens and 3 ducks, then you've got 600 square meters, that's your limit. But there should be an upper limit too. I think maybe 10 should be the upper limit, no matter how big your lot is. And those are my thoughts.
Councillor Matthews?
Just a point of clarification, what I was referring to when I talked about dogs and that sort of thing, I recognize that not everyone has a dog run or a dog house, but what the suggestion was that if you do have a dog run or a dog house, that it be located a certain distance away from the property line. That's more what I was referring to.
Well, I would say that I do support ducks the way this report is, with the rules that would be in the bylaws. I think it's important as we're moving along with new bylaws in consideration that we do have a proactive bylaw department. It's going to be important to have clear rules around how many and where and how, so that bylaw person is able to go engage and educate homeowners and have those discussions. And so clarity is going to be very important in sort of the rules around having fowl in your yard. Other than that, I would support it, that it come back with the details provided on guidelines.
I'll move then that council direct staff to bring forth required amendments to the animal control bylaw 1224 to a future council meeting to permit domestic ducks within the municipality.
Second.
I'll second.
Second, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Director?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, in this motion, would you need to put the exact amendments required that you want the staff to include in the bylaw? Because I know there was a bit of discussion and ideas, but just to give staff direction on which amendments, do you want the coop 10 feet from the neighboring property? Do you want staff to apply this to dogs and all other animals? Do you want a cap? There was lots of good ideas, but I just wondered if there was any more firm direction.
Bring you forward, we'll tear it apart.
I think what I heard is, if you're building a structure to house animals, a dog run would fall into that structure. But if you're talking about a dog running around a fenced yard, that's not going to fall into that. If you're building a structure, you're having animals to lay eggs and generate food. I think, like you indicated in here, a maximum number based on the size, where they should be in relation to the setbacks, on how they should be set back from the edge of the property. Those types of things would be the things that council would be looking for as amendments in the bylaw. If you come back with those, follow best practices from other municipalities, then we'll have a chance to debate that and either modify them or add new ones.
Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wrote down some notes with respect to that, the conversation that council was having. And there's also the circulating pump did you want to have that included so that the water is circulating, not to have the ability for mosquitoes to form in the standing water, as well as an upper limit as to how many you can have. You can have so many, but you can't have beyond this, no matter how large your property is.
Sure. A starting point.
Okay, thank you.
There's no other comments, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 5, BC Community Housing Fund, January 2021 intake. Director.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to discuss a budget amendment to facilitate a grant application to the Province of BC's Community Housing Fund January 2021 intake. This application will be for mixed-use development on the town-owned lots at 6219 to 6231 Main Street, comprised of approximately 20 units of affordable housing units, commercial space, and a new town hall and council chambers. It is important to note that extensive discussions will be had if and when grant funding is approved about the financial viability of the project moving forward. Affordable housing has come up time and time again through the OCP in 2017, the Council's strategic plan, housing needs assessment. One of the main objectives of the Grow Oliver economic development strategy is to encourage affordable housing and commercial spaces. It's been brought up time and time again. Town hall relocation has also come up. It's identified in the OCP, section 21.2.6 of the OCP states that options will be explored for relocating municipal offices to town-owned lands on Main Street to help consolidate and improve services and access to them. So going into talk a little bit more about the Community Housing Fund January 15, 2021 intake. As part of the biggest investment in BC affordable housing, $1.9 billion over 10 years, the province, through the Building BC Community Housing Fund, has issued a second notice of funding, in which the deadline for submission is January 15, 2021. As part of this funding, capital grants can be obtained at a rate of $100,000 per one-bedroom unit, $125,000 per two-bedroom unit, and $150,000 per three-bedroom unit. This equates to approximately $2.5 million for a 20-unit building with a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Also, there's opportunity for interim construction and takeout financing up to 100% of construction costs of the residential components. There's a 60-year operating agreement that would be required. Proposals must reflect the following mix of rents and income: 30% affordable housing, which is moderate income, 50% rent geared to income, which is a housing income limit, and 20% deep subsidy. To apply for the grant funding, staff have identified a 4-story mixed-use building with below-grade parking on the town-owned lots on Main Street, 6219 to 6231. The main story would feature approximately 5,000 square feet of commercial space, along with 4 dwelling units at the rear of the building fronting the lane. The second story would feature 9,000 square feet of municipal office space, which will address the space required to consolidate the finance department, council chambers, and town hall staff. The top 2 floors would feature approximately 16 units of affordable housing. The units will be primarily 3-bedroom, with a focus on addressing the core housing needs for families in our community. This proposal would check several boxes identified in the town policies in the OCP, strategic plan, downtown action plan, and Grow Oliver strategy, which include affordable housing, downtown revitalization, and relocation of town hall. If and when funding is approved and the project moves forward, then a development permit with variances, the variances would likely be 2 parking, that would be required, and that would reduce the required number of parking spaces depending on the unit count and the size of the commercial space. Staff do know that the proposed location benefits from being less than 100 feet from an underutilized parking lot in between Subway and Triangle Park, as well in close proximity to the Coast Hotel, which has 25 spaces that are public. The preliminary cost estimates of a building of this size is in the $9 to $10 million range. So to apply for this grant, approximately $40,000 would need to be budgeted by council. Staff are recommending that the funds come from the general reserve budget, which has a balance of $100,000. As per BC housing requirements and recommendations from a development consultant, the following items are to be completed as part of the grant funding application. Hiring a development consultant. This would be a component of approximately $20,000. They specialize in BC housing grants. It is a complex process and town staff do not have the time or resources to conduct the work. The consultants will conduct the following: an application to the housing fund, which includes working with the housing society operator to draw up a memorandum of understanding and exploring the rental ownership relationship. They'll also conduct a pro forma on costs to build. They'll also build rent roll and operating budgets for 10 years. And then they'll apply to the CMHC for seed funding. Also required is hiring an architect to complete schematic drawings with a site plan, preliminary elevations, and a floor plan. Initially, these costs were estimated at quite a bit higher than $5,000, but after discussions with several architects, we have managed to explain the exact scope of the project, and a budget of $5,000 will suffice in this case. The following professionals are also required: a surveyor to complete a legal and topographic plan, a geotechnical engineer to complete a report on soil conditions, an environmental consultant to complete a phase 1 assessment. And that's to do with any possible site contamination, which in this case we know that it has been used for office space, but it's still required as part of the due diligence, or I should say office of retail through its history. As mentioned above, seed funding is also available for up to $150,000 from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to help support costs with completing these types of pre-development activities related to the construction of new affordable housing units. This can help to cover the costs associated with the site assessments, geotechnical reports, and project drawings, which will ultimately help to potentially lower the $40,000 budget asked today. Staff reached out to the CMHC, who advised that recent successful applications have received seed funding in the range of $3,000 to $5,000 per affordable housing units, which would equate to $60,000 to $100,000 for a 20-unit building. An application is strengthened by a project that has the correct zoning in place, which in this case it would, strong financial backing, which would be the town, and is municipality-led. Those are often benefits to a strong application. Previous seed funding applications from CMHC have seen monetary advancements at the time of their approval, with the remaining funds dispersed once BC Community Housing Funding Grant has been approved. Some of the benefits of this proposal would be leveraging provincial funding dollars for use on a vacant town-owned site, developing 20 new affordable housing units for families with core housing needs, a new town hall, which means repurposing the existing town hall, whether that's the OTA, a wine experience center, getting the visitor center up on Main Street with more profile, consolidating several town offices, making it more convenient for customers and improving efficiencies among staff. The existing council chambers and finance building could then be disposed of. The existing visitor center could be repurposed for a tourism type use, whether that's a bike rental, cafe, etc., in which the town could collect credit for. New ground floor commercial units will be created in this proposal, in which council will have a choice in the use, whether that's a daycare, restaurant, secondary tasting room, co-work space, or library. A more active use that is open evenings and weekends is preferred. The proposal helps to achieve downtown revitalization. This will lead to more people downtown, more people spending money on local businesses. Perhaps nearby vacant sites could be spurred to develop, including the Mesa Hotel site and the old stadium lot. More active forms of transportation will be an outcome of this project, which places less reliance on a vehicle. An added bonus is that if funding is not approved and the project does not go ahead, then the geotech report, topographic and legal survey, the environmental study, those will all be useful items for if the town wishes to build on the property down the road or sell it. The development consultant that the town was speaking with, it hasn't been chosen at this stage, but they indicated that there is a high likelihood that a town-initiated project such as this would be approved for funding, as there's limited risk involved. Just to provide some context on other examples of communities our size, Rossland is going through a similar process with their Midtown mixed-use development building. They're in the process of constructing a similar project comprised of City Hall and flex spaces on the main level, with 37 units of affordable housing above it. It'll utilize vacant land and help to activate the downtown. The city owned the land from the start and will continue to own it when the project is completed. The residential portion of the building is being funded completely through BC Housing, with the City Hall portion being funded by leveraging some of the city's current reserves, future sale at City Hall, and insurance dollars from an issue they had with their roof. And there's also possible financing involved. The city is negotiating with an affordable housing society to manage the entire residential component of the facility, and in this case, it's the society that's taking out the mortgage. The total cost of the affordable housing portion of their building is estimated at 11.7 million, with the City Hall portion being 3 million for a total of 15 million. Of the 11.7, 5.7 will be capital grants for BC Housing. So as I mentioned earlier, the approximate value of this building would be in the $10 million range, with 2.5 of that just being capital grants, so just money towards the project. That would be repayable, or not repayable, but what was it would be a 35-year forgivable mortgage for the capital grant, which would be 2.5 million of this $10 million proposed building in the town of Oliver. To fund the approximate $2.5 to $3 million town hall and ground floor commercial portion of the building, a loan authorization bylaw would be required, which includes an assent process, either by way of a referendum or an alternate approval process. If town council chooses to explore the proposal further, it would be prudent that a business case be prepared by a consultant who specializes in these types of projects. As I mentioned throughout this presentation, the burden to taxpayers to construct the town hall portion could be lowered by either selling or leasing the existing or the proposed main floor commercial units to the library or other user groups. Another option to be explored further by staff and councils for the town to either sell or lease the existing town hall, finance and council chambers building, the existing visitor center building if relocated, or even selling the triangle lots along Station Street. The ownership rental structure of the affordable housing units would need to be explored with the housing operator, which would require entering into a memorandum of understanding. Disposing of the properties discussed above and requiring a housing society to take out the mortgage would minimize the amount of financing required for the town portion of the project. The residential and commercial components of the building would be assessed and taxable. This facility would also fall into the town's revitalization bylaw, which fully exempts properties for 5 years on improvements and then reverts to 100% taxable in 10 years. The estimated tax revenue would be developed by the consultant. Investing approximately $2.5 to $3 million into a project that earns future taxation revenue creates a unique opportunity for the town to earn new taxation revenue that would not be realized on any other current town infrastructure investment project. This has a positive impact to the taxpayer on future taxation levies. With the information above, staff are recommending that council approve a $40,000 budget amendment to conduct the due diligence associated with applying for funding to the BC Community Housing Fund. And the options for council, they may choose to support the recommendation, they may choose not to support it, or they may choose to refer it back to staff for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Questions, comments? Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just comment, I'm really excited about this. I think it's a really well-developed, well-thought-out plan. And I'll happily move the recommendation unless there are questions and comments. And I will move that council approve a $40,000 budget amendment in the general capital reserve to apply for a grant to the BC Community Housing Fund for a mixed-use development on the town-owned lots 6219 to 6231 Main Street, comprised of approximately 20 units of affordable housing, commercial space, and a new town hall and council chambers.
Second.
Second, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Seeing no questions, comments, I will just make a comment that I think this is a really exciting idea as well. I think the potential, there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of, the devil's in the details, and there's a lot of work to be done before this gets off the ground, but I think it's well worth the $40,000 investment to see if we can parlay that into something like this would be awesome for the town of Oliver. Any
Thank you, Your Worship. The correspondence report before council today has 3 specific items for action. The first one is the correspondence from the Lake Country Art Walk 2020. They are outlining a proposal that requests the installation of several art Adriatic style chairs in the municipality as a part of their community project. With COVID-19, their original art proposal had to be reworked, so they are reaching out to local municipalities in the Okanagan to place these chairs. They will be drawn on by artists and have positive messaging on them. I believe the placement would only be a year, maybe a little bit longer. So the request to Oliver Council is to advise the Lake Country Artwork Community Project that Council wishes to participate, or you may wish to receive and file this piece of correspondence.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will make the motion that council advise the Lake Country Art Walk 2020 committee that we will indeed participate. I haven't read through it. I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Second.
Second, Councillor Grace.
Stole your thunder there, sorry.
Councillor Benfield.
Well, I was gonna second, it's already been done, that's totally fine, but I would just add that I also think it's a fun idea. It doesn't look like there's really, reading through, they're taking care of the installation, they're taking care of any upkeep, if there's graffiti or vandalism on the chairs. They're hoping that people keep them up for 2 years, but obviously I guess we could decide to take them down earlier or leave them up longer. I think our biggest decision would be at some point in the near future, because they want to do this in September, where to put them, anywhere from 4 to 6 chairs in. So, I guess that's for another day.
I agree. It's a great idea. We just gotta figure out where. How many chairs? Is it 4 or
Is
2?
it 4 to 6 or something like that?
Oh, they said 4.
4. All right. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. The second piece of correspondence, there was 2 pieces dated August 4th and August 14th from Jill McCullum. She is representing the International Overdose Awareness Group and are reaching out to commemorate Awareness Day on August 31st. Their request is to flood or light up Town Hall in purple, and approval to place purple bows, which they supply, along Main Street and on the bridge. The resolution is that council may wish to authorize the lighting of Town Hall in purple and also authorizing the placement of purple bows along Main Street and along the bridge to commemorate International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st, or you may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Benfield.
Well, I would, after reading Jill's request, both of those letters, I would move that council authorize the lighting of Town Hall in purple and authorize the placement of purple bows along Main Street and on the bridge to commemorate International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st. It looks from Jill's messages like there was a group of moms from Moms Stop the Harlem meeting this evening to make these bows, and they're gonna put them up and take them down to be used in future years. And we all know that our overdose crisis in this province is in overdrive right now. So I think that it would be a nice way to show our support.
Absolutely. Councillor Mattis.
I will second the motion. I can't think of any reason why.
Absolutely. Any other comments? That's great. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. The third piece of correspondence is dated August 5th from Ann Howard, local consultant, I don't know if she's local, but a consultant, seeking a letter of support for an Osoyoos Indian Band affordable housing project. The project will be on Osoyoos Indian Band reserve lands and available for Indigenous people on reserve and off reserve, and as well to council resolution is that council may wish to provide a letter of support to Soy Indian Band for the affordable housing project to be located on the Indian Band Reserve, or you may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Grace.
I would move the recommendation that council provide a letter of support to the Assayas Indian Band for the affordable housing project to be located on the Assayas Indian Band Reserve.
Second, Councillor Bentamila. Yeah, I support this for sure. I think this is the original one that was being talked about last fall even. Glad to hear that they're still got it on the table, because I think they had a grant application date of March 1st or something, so they must be still in the running to get some money for this. Any other comments? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, and for information only, pieces of correspondence. One from Mayor Susan Hewitt from the Village of Caslow, seeking support for their UPCM resolution, strategy for rural economic development through rural healthcare. The second piece is from Mayor Laurie Ackerman, the City of Fort St. John, in response to the BC Utilities Commission decision on the approval of BC Hydro's application to amend the net metering service rate. Also, a piece of correspondence from Parks Canada provided an update on the proposed National Park Reserve in the South Okanagan Similkameen. A piece of correspondence that was received outlining concerns for rodent control and the use of poison. Staff have replied to the writer, just indicating the practices within the town of Oliver that we use traps and not poison, which she was very pleased to hear. And two policies from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, issuing updated policy directives for the Liquor, Cannabis and Regulation Branch. And the resolution is that the correspondence listed in item J5 and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just point out to council that the letter from Fort St. John, if you have a chance to read it, relates to the power that we will be generating by the fire station, which now probably makes that no longer economically feasible, but we're proceeding with it anyways. Just as an FYI, that's what it refers to, is the price that we will be getting for the electricity that we generate. So I would make the motion that the correspondence listed in item J5 and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
Seconded, Councillor Schwarzenberg. Any further comments, questions on the correspondence? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to reports, we've got our July building permit status report.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Second. Councillor Grace, any comments, questions on that report? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And the monthly fire report from the Oliver Fire Department. Any comments, questions on that?
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt, Councillor Grace. Second, Councillor Bentamila. Further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Moving to council reports, Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. The strategic planning session on August the 10th and the plaza design meeting this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Took about a week's holidays to go back to Calgary. On Wednesday the 19th, attended the council get-together at Councillor Mattis's house with a pool party. It was a great time, and I'd like to thank Councillor Mattis and Brenda for hosting us all. And then earlier today, the design workshop for future development options on Station Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberg. Councillor Bentamila.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure that I looked at the right attempted ransomware attack on the system, so they're still down. They had limited ability to generate an agenda, therefore we just have a very short one. And directors are still without email, most staff is still without email and quite limited services. So that was on Thursday. And earlier today, the Oliver Plaza Design Workshop with most of council and the Downtown Advisory Committee meeting. And I also had the opportunity to join our MP, Richard Canning, and some community members for a stop on his annual riding event. So he's at Medici's this afternoon. And then tonight's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Bentamela. Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. Monday, August 10th, the strategic planning session with the rest of council. August 17th was an Oliver Parks and Rec Society meeting. August 19th was the pool party at Councillor Mana's house. And today, the Oliver Plaza Design Workshop, as well as today's meetings. And I just wanted to say, I know we blew right past in the meeting, but the annual report takes an incredible amount of work together, so congratulations to the staff on getting that done, doing a good job.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. August 10th, the strategic planning session with council. August 17th, all over Parks and Recreation meeting and the park tour, which was actually very informative. Lots of good work going on by all the Parks and Recreation crews. On August 18th, I attended or tuned into a webinar, an LGLA MIBC webinar, Navigating the Complexities of COVID-19. August 19th with the council social get-together and the State Street planning session that I attended this morning. I just will let council know that my nomination for Director at Large for UBCM is accepted and posted. The challenge will be there's 14 for 5 positions, and without being able to get up and talk to a group of people, it's going to be the only thing I'll be able to do is put a 2-minute video together. So we'll see. Election will take place at a virtual conference in September, and I'll also let you know that I was selected to participate in a climate leadership course being put on by FCM this year for elected officials. The objective is to acquire greater knowledge of tools for incorporating the climate lens into community initiatives. The course does have an in-person component in Ottawa, but because of COVID-19, that is still being developed. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know. The course will run from September, October, and November with 3 homework activities that I'll have to take place as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Our next meeting is September 8th, Tuesday, regular open council meeting. Acting mayor schedule for the rest of August is Councillor Grice, and September starting with Councillor Bentamela. Public question period. We don't have any public here, so I will look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Bentamela, seconded. Councillor Grice, call the question. Those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, council. Thanks, staff.